There are some big enthusiasts you come across to big enthusiasts of gambit openings. Gambit openings, well, let me tell you something. There is no opening in chess, modern chess theory, that starts with or ends, that has word gambit in it, is entirely sound. There is a king's gambit. Well, queen's gambit is the only exception because this queen's gambit accepted or declined. It's not really a gambit when one side gives a pawn and gets it back 2 moves later. But real gambits are the gambits where you give up a pawn and you don't expect to get it back. So one of those gambits, and what I want to talk about now, is a Blackmar-Diemer Gambit. Blackmar-Diemer Gambit is, well, starts with moves. Well, it can start with any move. It can start with the move e4 or d4. Well, for example, after e4, knight f6, knight c3, d5, it started like Alekhine, and after d4, it turns into a Blackmar-Diemer Gambit. So, but normally Blackmar-Diemer Gambit starts with moves d4, knight f6, knight c3. Now white wants to play e4, and after d5 they play e4. You see, we got the same position as we started. We can start with Alekhine defense. Or anyway, after e4, there are number of continuations for black here. Main move is de, but simple move. If you want to do it, this gambit is not sound. Now, the simple way to get some, even not just equalize, but to get some advantage even for black, the simple way that you can learn real quick is knight takes e4. Now, knight takes e4, d takes e, and black is a pawn up. Now, what can we say about this position? Is there an immediate way? Is there a way where white can immediately get their pawn back? No, there isn't. Now, does white have enough development advantage, of enough of any kind of advantage, to justify a loss of a central pawn? Absolutely not. There are 2 ways to play for white here. One way is to go f3, and the other way is to go bishop e3. f3 is the main move. That's how white would probably play if they play this opening against you. But however, let's look at bishop e3, bishop f5. We're going to go, and after knight e2, e6, and knight g3, we can go simply bishop g6. We're not going to give them back pawn. So h4, h5. And on bishop e2, we simply go knight to d7. And you see, seems like white has enough pressure on h5 pawn to take it and to win this pawn. But it's not so. After bishop takes h5, bishop takes h5, and knight takes h5, black can simply go g6, knight g3, and rook takes h4, and black is still up a pawn. Well, I don't think you're going to see anyone playing you in this position. Bishop e3 move. So the main move is f3. So let's continue with f3. We go bishop f5. Now, probably c3. What can white, well, of course black could have taken, but we don't want to develop white's pieces after ef. We don't want to help white to develop. No. We're going to develop our piece, and also we maintain the extra pawn. If white goes c3, for example, we go e6, bishop e3, and white is waiting when black is going to take on f3 to develop the knight with the tempo. Now we can go bishop e7. After fe, bishop takes e4, queen g4. I'm just giving you the game that was played that relatively good player played with black, and he got an advantage. Bishop g6. I'm just quoting you. There is no theory developed in this variation. So I'm just saying a simple way for black to get a better position. Knight d7, and if knight d2, knight f6, white has absolutely nothing for a pawn. White has no initiative, and they have, well, knight d2 was not necessary, of course, but then if white goes bishop e2, then we go knight f6, queen g3, knight e4, and queen is very uncomfortable. And we having central position even after knight d5. We having central position, we're having an extra pawn, and there's nothing white has that we don't have, and white is a central pawn down. This is totally unsound opening, and you shouldn't waste much time studying it. You should just learn one line, the one I just showed you, and you're ready to crush this opening. That's a very convincing play to play against this opening. Again, quickly, d4, d5, well, it depends on what opening do you play, whether you play d5 for black or knight f6, or you can start with knight f6, and after knight c3 you go d5 and e4. Again, knight takes e4. Simple, very easy way to get an advantage against totally unsound Blackmar-Diemer Gambit. That's all you have to know about it. Bird opening is very interesting opening, in the type of opening. This is a type of opening that reminds you like a Dutch defense for black with extra tempo if you play white. But who plays the bird opening? People who try to kill two birds. They try to get unusual type of position where they don't have to study much theory and where they get good possibilities of attack. It's an opening for lazy and at the same time ambitious players. So it's a rather rare combination, and if you are lazy, how can you be ambitious? It's almost a contradiction of facts, but they are players. They are lazy to study theory, and they are very ambitious to perform some kind of attack. So let's talk about f4, the bird opening. Best and obvious move to play for black is d5, and after knight f3, g6. Now, let me explain why I want to play g6 in so early stage of the game. The reason I want to play g6 is because if white plays bird defense, bird opening, I want to make sure they go with d3 or d4. I want to make sure they don't play, suppose if we played knight f6 on second move, they don't have an option to fianchetto their bishop on b2 where it would stand well, and then play e3. So by playing second move g6, we eliminate the b3 possibility. Now b3 is totally pointless because bishop g7, and whatever white does, if they do d4, they block this diagonal. If they do knight c3, knight doesn't stand well on c3 and can be and it's subject to get attacked. So obviously white should stick to e3 move. Another option for white in this position, e3 is the main move, but g3. So if they play so-called Leningrad variation of Dutch, well, that's something black plays with extra tempo. After g3, I would recommend to go bishop g2, bishop g7, bishop g2, knight f6, and if both sides castle and white goes d3, then black can simply play b6. That's what I would recommend. No c5. We play b6 and we wait for white to go e4. On knight c3, we go bishop b7. And if white goes knight e5, we go knight b to d7. Knight takes d7, queen takes d7. This is very good position for white. If white, for black, and if white plays e4, and after d takes c and d takes c, and black plays simply rook fd8, and you can tell black has an advantage here. For instance, if queen takes d1, we would like to take with a knight on queen takes d7, knight takes d7. Maybe knight goes to c5. Well, this is strictly positional concept. Now, what black would want to do is to play bishop takes c3. You see, when you fianchetto bishop on g7, you don't normally want to give it back for the knight because you weaken your you weaken your king position. So based on the pawn structure, but this is an end game, and if black goes now knight c5, black has big advantage in the opening in a pawn structure. So this position is after knight takes d7, where white is forced to play e5 practically. We can take on g2, and black is at least equal. They can even go f6 here, and they will be fine. E takes f, followed by f5. White has absolutely no advantage. So this is the way I would recommend to play if white tries to fianchetto their bishop. But if not, then we're going to get position after f4, d5, and we get knight f3, g6, then white will go e3. And on after e3, bishop g7, then, well, white has two ways to play. Either they can go d3 or they can go d4. So if they go d3, so this way they still may play e4 later in the game, and that's what they are hoping for. If they go d3, then we go knight to h6. I like knight on h6 because knight may possibly go to f5. Bishop e2, black castles, white castles, and black goes b6. You see, black simply wants to play bishop b7, and knight is going to go to f5 later. After e4, black also is getting an advantage here. D takes e, d takes e. Now black exchanges queens, rook takes d1, bishop b7, and after e5, knight a6. Now you can see why black is better. White, first of all, white is overextended in its center, and black has very strongly placed, very well placed minor pieces. Knight may go to b4 or c5, the other knight goes to f5, bishop on g7 is relatively passive, but can be quickly brought back into the game by playing f6 and opening this h8, a1 diagonal. So this position is definitely good position for black. So let's go back now to the most expected continuation. In my opinion, most expected. Overall, bird's opening is not a popular opening, so f4, d5, knight f3, g6, e3, bishop g7, d4 probably. That's so-called stonewall system in Dutch defense played with extra tempo for white. But notice this is not acceptable for white, because if black plays it, black wants to get some kind of some kind of a stable position, and where white does not have easy breakthroughs. But here you cannot play this type of position, which is totally closed position, just because you have an extra tempo, because extra tempo, as we know, in closed positions are totally irrelevant. Not totally, almost irrelevant. So after d4, we can go simply knight h6. Now on bishop e2, we just castle, and if white castles, we go knight f5. And here is the plan for black. You see the weak square on e4, that's where knight wants to get. So we're going to go knight d6 and possibly get on e4, and the other knight is going to go from b8 to d7, f6, and also control the e4 square. e4 square is the key of whole position. Meanwhile, white does not have e5 square, because if they put some piece on e5 like knight, black can always play f6 and kick it out. So after knight f5, c3, we go knight d6, and on b3 we go knight d7. Our knight heading to f6 and e4. And after we go knight d7, knight e5, knight f6, and after h3 we go knight f to e4. See, we put one knight on e4, we put the f knight on e4. This is very important because we are intending to kick the knight, by white's knight, by playing f6. Now after we played knight f to e4, queen e1, suppose white wants to play queen h4. Now we can go c5, try to open position in the center when we have superiority in the center. We have very good knight on e4, and after bishop a3, we play c takes d. Now if c takes d, black simply goes f6, and after knight d3, bishop f5, black has great position. And if white tries something different, like bishop takes d6 in this position, bishop takes d6, then e takes d6, and after knight f3, d takes c. This is just winning for black. So what white has to do now, they have to take on d4, and now after bishop f5, black simply has good size advantage. I think they have very well placed knight on e4. They can always kick black's knight, and they have the c file. This is an easy way to play, and again, we did not really exhaust every possibility and every variation here, but this is the plan. When you play against the openings that are passive for white, this is relatively passive in early stage, all you need is a good plan, and you know how to develop your pieces. And if you do that, you're going to do very well in the bird opening, and also in any opening that it does not have good, healthy positional idea behind it.